Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 6. So in this chapter, we'll mainly focus on competition. So let's first begin with the learning objectives and chapter goal. Now, for the first learning objectives, we would like to talk about the unique characteristics of perfectly competitive markets. And then we'll move on to talk about how total profits changes as output expense. We'll also want to know how firm can make the output to maximize the profit. Then we'll move on to talk about the determinants of competitive firms and competitive market supply curve. At the end, we will explain how profit can get eliminated in perfectly competitive markets. So the goal of this chapter is actually help you to understand how supply decisions are made in competitive markets. Now let's first begin with the market structure. So you can see this is a spectrum, right? And then on the left hand side, it shows the perfectly competition on the pink area, right? And then as it move to the right hand side, okay, as it move to the right hand side, you can see on the green part, it shows monopoly, okay? So pink part and then the green part shows the two extreme case. One is perfectly competitive competition, and another part will be monopoly, okay? So market structure refers to the number and relative size of the firms in the industry, okay? And market structure always varies. Some markets, they probably are very similar to perfectly competition. Some markets, they will just have one supplier, which will be just a monopoly, okay? So you can see this spectrum, okay, shows the range of the power a firm might have. So you can think about in this spectrum, pink side is perfectly competition. Green side, okay, is monopoly. Which one will have their market power? Monopoly or perfectly competition? Think about this question because we will talk about this one as we move on to the next slides. And then we see the firms will fall along a spectrum of competition. So from pink side to the green side, the competition become less and less, okay? And that means the firms has more and more market power. So let's first begin with the pink side, okay? Perfect competition. So a perfectly competitive firm compete with many other firms in a perfectly competitive market, which means they will have no market power because there are a lot of firms in that market, right? So every firms, they are just a price taker. No one producer or no one consumers is able to change the market price. Everyone is just a price taker. And we can see they're not, we will say that in reality, there is no really perfectly competitive market, okay? But there are some markets that might similar to perfectly competitive market. For example, the catfish farmers in the south. We know that catfish, we can treat them as a very similar product, right? And then if you want to catch the catfish, you don't need to pay a lot of money, right? We could say there is no entry barrier into this type of the market, right? I just need to go to a river and I can catch the catfish, right? And then after that, I can just sell it in the market. So catfish farmers in the south, very similar to perfectly competitive market. A monopoly, which was on the green side of the spectrum. Okay, so a monopoly firms. So a monopoly firms supplies the entire markets of a particular good or service, which means there is no direct competitors. We can see this monopoly, it has complete market power. It can just able to change the market price of the good or service. And a monopoly firm is a price setter. So we would like to say this is another extreme case, a monopoly firm, which is on the green side of the spectrum. Okay, so a monopoly firm supplies the entire market of a particular good or service, which means there is no direct competitors for that monopoly, right? And then they were able to change the market power. Oh, sorry, they were able to change the market price of the good or service. Therefore, we would like to say a monopoly firm is a price sector. The example will be if you live in Corvallis. I'm not sure in Albany, right? But if you live in Corvallis, we probably will have only one garbage truck company, right? Which is Republic. So the Republic service in the Corvallis, we can treat it as monopoly, right? It has perfectly control the market price. If the Republic service increase the price, then the consumers they can only accept it, right? So we would like to say Republic service in Corvallis, it was just the price sector. Then let's move on to talk about different type of the competitions except for perfectly competition and the monopoly. There are some companies that lies between these two extreme cases, right? So we will call them as imperfect competition, okay? So imperfect competition exists in a market structure that lies between monopoly and perfect competition. We can see there is a one case like duopoly. What does duopoly mean? So duopoly means two firms supply a particular product. Can you think about an example of duopoly? In the soft drink industry, okay? Coke and Pepsi, we can treat them as duopoly, okay? There is another type of the imperfect competition, which is oligopoly. So oligopoly means there are several firms, not only two or one firms, okay? So there are few large firms supply all or most of a similar product. Think about an example of oligopoly, like the airline industry, okay? We see the American Airlines, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines. Those companies, they supply almost most of their flights, right? And then we can also see another example comes from the automobile industry, Ford, Volkswagen, and then Tesla. Okay, so we can see those automobile firms, okay, industries, they offer very similar products, but not exactly the same, right? Those products, they are differentiated. Another type of the imperfect competition, okay, lies between monopolist competition. So monopoly competition is totally different from monopoly, okay? Monopolist competition means there are a lot of firms, they supply essentially the very similar products, but each enjoys significant brand loyalty. So, for example, we have the gasoline stations and like the fast food outlets, and then, for example, the coffee shop, Starbucks. We have the coffee culture. We have Dutch Bros, right? They offer very similar products, but consumers they probably will have a strong or significant brand loyalty. Now let's see. Go back to our main focus in this chapter. Okay, perfectly competition. So a competitive market is the market that producers have no market power. That is what we call perfectly competition market, perfectly competitive market. So all firms they sell an identical product. Do you think this is will be exist in our reality? Probably not, right? But in order to analyze easily, okay, in the competition market, okay, so this is one of the assumption. We assume all firms they will sell an identical product, and the output of a single firm is so small compared to the market supply. That is, this firm have no market power, okay, has no market power or has no significant impact on total quantity of price in the market. Firms, they are just a price taker. Now let's talk about the market demand versus the firm's demand. So in the perfectly competition, the market demand curve and firm's demand curve, they are totally different. if we see this is the market demand, okay, so if I treat this is the market, this is the price, this is the quantity, right? This is the demand curve for the market, and this is the supply curve for the market. And we know this will be the equilibrium price, right? Because these demand curve and supply curve, they intersect at a point, and this is the equilibrium point. We will have the price at P1 and the market demand maybe at QM. Okay, I put a QM here, represents for the market demand. Now, we know firm is just a price taker. So for firm, they'll be different. In a market, it will decide the equilibrium price will be at P1. So for firms, it will just the price taker. Therefore, this will be the firm's demand curve. Because firm is just a price taker. Okay, so you can see the difference now. You can see the difference. The firm's demand curve is always horizontal. Okay, this is the firm's demand curve, always horizontal, fixed at the one price level, because firm's just a price taker. However, for the market demand curve, we can see the market demand curve is downward sloping. This is the market demand curve, okay, downward sloping. And this graph, okay, just show what I draw here, okay? Demand and supply curve in the market, they determine the equilibrium price, right? And then firms, they were just a price taker. So the market demand curve is downward sloping. However, for a single firm, okay, it will face their demand curve is horizontal. Now let's see. We know that the total revenue, TR, okay, represents for total revenue, it will equal price times quantity, right? Price times quantity, then we can get the total revenue from the firm. And then for the average revenue, how we can get the average revenue? The average revenue will equal the total revenue. So we have the total revenue, I write down here. The total revenue will equal price times quantity, right? And then how about average revenue? Average revenue is just equal to total revenue divided quantity, right? So we will use P times Q divide Q, right? So Q and Q here can eliminate it, right? So we have Q eliminated, only have P left, right? So that will be for the average revenue. And then we will also need to know the marginal revenue. Why we need to know this? Because those are important for a firm to determine how much or how many to produce, okay? So marginal revenue represents the change in total revenue divides the change in output, okay? So this is the way that we compute for the marginal revenue, okay? Equal the change in total output divides the change in total revenue divide change in output. And for example, if our outputs, okay, we have Q1. So here we have different outputs. One is at Q1. Then we have the total revenue one will equal price times Q1, right? Because every firm is just a price taker, so the price will always the same, but the output will be different. Then when output increase to Q2, we have our total revenue equal price times Q2, right? So here, can we get the change in total outputs? The change in total outputs will equal the total output. The change in total revenue will equal the total revenue at new outputs subtract the original total revenue, right? So P times Q2 subtract P times Q1. Here we have P and P, right? This is the common factor. We can just leave it out. So have P times Q2 subtract Q1, right? And then what we can do, you can just put this number, okay, back to our marginal revenue. This formula, we have price times Q2 subtract Q1, right? And then divide the change in output. The change in output from Q1 to Q2, the change in output will be Q2 subtract Q1, right? Then what we were left, you can see in this formula, you can delete this part, right? Because they are the same, we can eliminate it. So here I'll write it down here. Marginal revenue in a perfectly competition market, we will have marginal revenue also equal price, right? So let's see one example. You can see this is the example. It shows the table, right? The first column shows the output, right? The second column shows the price, and then followed by the total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue. So you can see the price always fixed, right, at $10. So if there is no output, which means there is no total revenue, right? So let's see if the total revenue, okay, so if now the outputs increase from 0 to 1, what will happen? I'll write it down things here, okay? So we have, let me just write it down here. Now the quantity equal 1, right? We have the total revenue will equal price times the quantity. So P times Q, $10 times 1 will equal $10, right? And then you can also get the average revenue. So the average revenue will just equal total revenue divide quantity, right? So we have $10 divide 1 equal $10, right? Now, how about the marginal revenue? How about the marginal revenue? Marginal revenue equal the change in total revenue divide the change in output, right? If there is no output, that means there is no total revenue, right? So our current revenue is $10, subtract previous 0. And then the change in output is from 0 to 1, so it will be 1. It will equal $10 as well. Okay, so this part was still equal. Let me just write it down here. We're equal $10. Okay, so that you can fill the blank, okay, in the quantity equal 1. And then you can continue to do that, okay? So you can see here we fill the total revenue, just equal price times quantity. You can use the first column times the second column to get the total revenue, right? And then as we talk about this average revenue, okay, this average revenue will always equal price. So it will easily for you to fill out the average revenue, okay, also equal $10. And just based on what we have here, okay, just based on what we have here, we also, in a perfectly competitive market, marginal revenue also equal price, right? So you can see this is a very interesting phenomenon, very interesting phenomenon. In a perfectly competitive market, we have marginal revenue always equal price. We will always have this one, okay, in a perfectly competitive market. So let's see, marginal revenue equal price, okay, is only true for perfectly competitive market. Marginal revenue equal price is only true for perfectly competitive market. So for each unit, okay, each unit increase in quantity will cause the revenue to increase by price. And this is why we have the marginal revenue always equal price in a perfectly competitive market. And this is a very, very important, okay? In the other type of the competition, for example, in monopoly, in duopoly, in oligopoly, or monopolist competition, price will not equal marginal revenue. Price equal marginal revenue only true for perfectly competitive market. Now let's see the profit maximization rule. How firms will make their output decision to maximize their profit. So we know that firms will always compare with marginal revenue and marginal cost. Because producing one unit would definitely involve additional cost, right? But on the other hand, it will also bring additional revenue. So firms need to compare if the marginal revenue will be larger or smaller than marginal cost. So we know that marginal revenue represents, okay, the additional revenue that can be brought by one additional output. And we know the marginal cost, okay, the marginal costs were related to additional cost if one actual output is produced, right? So we have marginal profit. So here we will have the marginal profit. Based on this one, the marginal profit, will equal marginal revenue subtract marginal cost, right? Then what should firm do? We might ask this type of question. If marginal revenue larger than marginal cost, what a firm should do? If marginal revenue smaller than marginal cost, then what a firm would do? That could be the question we might ask, okay? So you can think about if you would like to produce one additional output, then we have the marginal revenue larger than marginal cost. Should firm produce? Of course, right? Because this additional output will bring us more profit, right? However, think about another case. If the firm decides to produce one actual unit of output, but the marginal revenue is smaller than the marginal cost, which means producing this actual unit of the output will bring us negative profit, then firm would definitely choose not to produce that unit, right? So, what I like to say, if quality increased by 1 unit, we know that the revenue will increase by marginal revenue, right? Cost will increase by marginal cost. So we need to compare with marginal revenue and marginal cost. This is very important, okay? Compare with marginal revenue and marginal cost. If marginal revenue larger than marginal cost, then continue producing will be a good strategy to have more profit, right? If marginal revenue smaller than marginal cost, then firm should cut their production. Therefore, when will we stop? Okay, when the firm will stop producing? When the marginal revenue equal marginal cost, then firm were not producing anymore. They will not cut down production anymore. Okay, so profit is maximized by choosing the level of the output that can make the marginal revenue equal marginal cost. So since the firm is just the price taker in perfectly competitive market, so we can put the market price equal marginal revenue equal marginal cost as the profit maximization rule. Okay, so this is the profit maximization rule in perfectly competitive markets. So let's see one example. How we can, this is the exam, we will just talk about how to get the profit maximization rule, right, through mathematics. But now we can also see how to compute the profit through graph. Okay, so let me show you the next slides. So in the next slides, you can see we have the price on vertical axis, we have the quantity on horizontal axis, okay? And these are the two curves. So let me draw these two curves here as well. So this is the price, this is the quantity, okay? And then we have this red line here represents for average total cost. So here first I will draw the line like this one. I will mark it as average total cost. And then I will draw another line here. I can mark it as marginal cost. Okay? This will be our marginal cost curve. And then we know the firm is just a price taker, right? We can mark another curve here. So this curve, if I mark this curve here, this will be our price curve, okay? This P star here will be the market price, okay? So now I just draw a curve like this way. It's horizontal, okay? Because firms is just a price taker, I will mark this one as the price, and then it will also equal to marginal revenue, right? This is only true for perfectly competitive market. Do you still remember the rule that we just talked about? How firm made decision to maximize their profit? Choose the output that can make the marginal revenue equal marginal cost, right? This will be our profit maximization rule. And then in a perfectly competitive market, it can also equal to the market price. So we need to find out the intersection point that can make the marginal revenue equal marginal cost. Look at this graph. Look at this graph. This is our marginal revenue curve, right? And you can see this is and this will be our marginal cost curve, right? So look at these two curves, this marginal cost curve and the marginal revenue curve. They intersect at this point. Okay, I will mark this as point A. At this point A, we can see at point A, I'll just write it down. We will have marginal cost curve intersect with marginal revenue curve, right? So this will be the profit maximization point, okay? This point A here will be profit maximization, okay? Maximization point. And then what you need to do, so now what you can do is draw a vertical line, okay? Mark this one will be the profit maximization output. I mark it as Q1, okay? So Q1 will be the profit maximization output. Here we have Q1. And then you can see this Q1, if you draw a vertical line here, it will intersect at a point on the average total cost curve, right? I marked it as point B. So you can see this point B here. We'll have the point B here. I'll just write it down here. So point B is on the average total cost curve, right? Average total cost curve. And then what you need to do is to find out the price related to point B. I mark here, this will be our average total cost, right? This will be our average total cost. So now we have at point B, we have the average total cost. And then may I know now, what about the total cost? What about the total cost? The total cost will actually equal average total cost times quantity, right? Total cost will equal average total cost times quantity. So total cost, this area will represent the total cost, right? This area will represent the total cost, okay? And then how about the total revenue? How about the total revenue? The total revenue will equal price times the outputs, right? Price times the output. Price times the output will be the larger, let me just draw here, okay? It will be equal, now we don't need this shade anymore because we already know the total cost. Now let's just mainly focus on total revenue. So how about the total revenue? Total revenue equal price times the output, right? Price is here times the output. Price times the output, it will be like this area, right? This shady area will represent the total revenue, right? And then can you compute the profit? Profit always use pi to represent in economics, okay? So it will equal the total revenue subtract the total cost, right? Total revenue subtract total cost will equal price times Q1 subtract price times Q1 equal price times Q1 subtract average total cost times Q1, right? Okay, so where can we show this profit in this graph? Where can we show this profit in this graph? The profit in this graph, okay, is actually, let me see. This is the marginal cost curve, okay? This is the marginal cost curve. And okay, so this is the point B. This is the point B on average total cost curve. And then what about the profit? The profit is actually in this graph will be this area, okay? Will be this area. So this triangle, sorry, this rectangular here, okay, will represent this rectangular here, okay, will be represents the profit. So you can see in this graph, okay, if we have now the price equal $10, and then we can find out the correspondent average total cost equal $8.75, right? So we can get finally the total profit. Okay, the total profit will equal $10, right? Price times the quantity, 8 units, subtract the average total revenue. Average total cost will be $8.75 times 8 units. So finally, we can get the profit equal $10. So that will be in here is just the table summarize, okay, how firms can make their outputs to maximize the profit. When the price larger than marginal cost. When a price larger than marginal cost, firms can continue to produce until the marginal revenue equal marginal cost. When price equal to marginal cost, price here will equal, as we talk about, price will equal marginal revenue, right? So when marginal revenue equal marginal cost, then we know the profit reach the maximization, okay? And if now the marginal revenue or like the price less than marginal cost, then firm should decrease their production to have a higher profit. So this is table summarize the profit maximization rule for a competitive firm. Now let's see from the supply side. Okay, here we just finished the demand side, and then we also talk about the output of the firm to maximize the profits. Now let's move on to talk about the supply side. So in the competitive market, as the market price changes in the competitive market, then firms can take the new prices given. Okay, firms just take the new prices given, and then firm will adjust the quantity until the marginal cost equal price, because price will equal marginal revenue, right? And the firm can always adjust the quantity to make marginal cost equal marginal revenue to maximize the profit. So profit maximization quantity will move along the marginal cost curve, which means for a firm's short run supply curve is actually the marginal supply curve. Okay, so this is important. Firm's short run supply curve is actually the marginal cost curve. Why? Because firm will make decisions that make price equal marginal revenue equal marginal cost, right? And when price changes, it will adjust. It will adjust the quantity. Firms can adjust the quantity to make the price always equal to marginal cost curve, right? Therefore, the marginal cost curve is actually, in the short run, okay, just the firm's supply curve. Anything alters the marginal cost curve will change the supply curve. Okay, will change the supply behavior of the firm. So we talk about some determinants can change the supply curve. For example, this part we already talked about in chapter 3 and chapter 5. Okay, so if the wages increase, decrease, like the price of the factor inputs changes, borrowing cost changes, it will also shift the supply curve, right? Or like technology would reduce the cost of production, so that would definitely change the supply behavior and then the supplier's expectations. Okay, so for example, if wage increase, then we know the marginal cost will increase as well, which will shift the supply curve of a single firm to the left-hand side, right? And market supply is just the total quantity supplied by each firm at the different price, right? So the market supply curve is just the sum of the marginal cost curve of all the firms. I will show you later in a graph. So you can see here we have, for example, we have three firms, right? A, B, C, three firms. And then when market price is at $3, you can see those three firms, okay, have different marginal cost curve. Those marginal cost curve is also their short run supply curve. And when the market price is at $3, the first firm would like to offer 40 units. The second firm would like to offer 60 units, and then the third firms would like to offer maybe 50 units, right? So how we get the market supply at the price equal $3? You just need to sum all those firms' outputs, right? So you just need to get 40 plus maybe 60 plus 50, okay, to get the firm's output equal 150, okay? So this is what we say the market supply curve is just constructed by summing firms' quantities at each prices. And then similar to the single firm's supply determinants, The market supply determinants also were determined by the factors of the inputs, uh, the technology, the expectations. So all those were also the determinants of their market supply behavior. And it also increase the numbers of the firms. So there are more firms join into the market, then there are more market supply, right? Now let's see the last part of this chapter talking about the exit and entry of perfectly competitive firms, talking about the long run economic profit. So we know that positive economic profit can influence firms' entry or exit into the market. For example, we talk about in perfectly competitive market, there is no barrier to entry, no barrier to exit, right? So you can think about in the catfish farmer market, okay, in the south of the United States. If selling the catfish can always bring a positive profit because there is no entry barrier, right? Everyone can just go to a river, catch the catfish, right? So positive economic profit can lure more people join into the catfish industry, right? To catch those catfish. And then more and more supplier, more and more farmers to catch those catfish. That means there are more supplier in the market, more catfish will be available. That will make the price of the catfish goes down, right? So we know if now this market exists the positive economic profit, then new firms can just enter the market very easily. Okay, can enter the industry very easily because there is no barriers. And then the market supply curve will shift outwards. When market supply curve shift outwards, what happens? See from this graph, if this is the price, this is the quantity, this is the market demand, and this is the market supply, okay? And now as more firms enter this market, it will shift the supply curve outwards, right? And then it will make the market price goes down because the point A will be the initial price at P1, point B will be the new price at P2, right? And you can see as more firms enter the market, it will shift the supply curve outwards and then the market price goes down. When market price goes down means the profit will go down, right? So the market price will decreases output as output expands. And then the firms enter a competitive industry as long as the positive economic profit exists. So think about one question. When the firm will stop entering this market? When the firm will stop entering into this market? Until there is no positive profit, right? Until there's no positive profit. So in a perfectly competitive market, in the very long run, this market would definitely go back to zero economic profit because at that time, there is no entry, no exit. The market will reach the equilibrium. So you can see as more firms enter the market, enter the market price will goes down and then the profit goes down, right? So in the long run, okay, in the long run, for the competitive markets, the equilibrium will occur when price. This is a very important conclusion, okay? So in the very long run, as we talk about, if there are still some positive economic profit, then firm, it will lure new firms to entry, right? So until the price equal the minimum of the average total cost, until price equal the minimum average total cost, then there is no positive economic profit. So the economic profit will equal zero. Economic profit will equal zero. And then at that time, firm will stop entry and exit. Market will reach the long run equilibrium. Okay, So we talk about in a perfectly competitive market, okay, there is no significant barriers to entry. And barriers to entry, we call them are some obstacles that makes it difficult or impossible for the likely to be producers to enter a market. So you can think about there are some barriers might exist in some market. Why the Republic service, the garbage service will be the only one provider in Covalis. Maybe because it has some special licensing. Okay, it purchase or it dominant the special license from the government, right? So that could be one of the significant barrier. And then for the competitive market, it has some characteristics. So for example, it has many firms. Actually, it has tons of the firms. And then the market supply curve is downward sloping, right? This is for market. And all the markets or all the firms, they only produce one product, and this product is identical. It has very, very low entry barriers, and it has perfect information. So there is no misinformation or information competition in this market. This is from firms, from markets. Now let's see for firms in the competitive market. Firms, they're just a price taker. Okay, firms, they're just a price taker, and then they will set the outputs always. Okay, set the outputs always have the price equal marginal cost to maximize the profit. And then in the long run, because the price will equal to the minimum average total cost, which means there is no zero profit for a single firm. Okay, so let's see some policy perspectives for the competition. Does competition help or hurt the social welfare? Think about this question. Does competition help or hurt their social welfare? Do you like competition? Or do you like just one single firm to dominate one industry in the market? Definitely, definitely for their competition, okay, perfect, especially for perfectly competition, okay, it will squeeze the price nearly back to the minimum average total cost, and that will actually can minimize the cost and also promote innovation, push the firms to promote their innovation, either for technology, either for their management, okay, entrepreneurship, okay. So actually, competition is pretty healthy and pretty helpful to promote the whole society's welfare. All right, so that will be the end of this chapter. Let me just summarize what we talk about it. So we first identified the unique characteristic of perfectly competitive firms and markets. Okay, this we will just summarize, right? And then we also illustrate how total profit will changes as output expenses. Okay. After that, we talk about how the what's the profit maximization rule in perfectly competitive market. Price should equal marginal cost equal marginal revenue. Okay. And then we'll also talk about how we can use the graph to compute the profit. We also discuss the determinants of competitive market supply. Okay. For example, like the price of the factors input, like price of the wages, price of their borrowing cost, etc. Okay. We also talk about technology will also affect the market supply and then expectations. In the market, we also talk about the numbers of the firms. Now, at the end, we explain why profit can be eliminated, why in the very long run, the economic profit will reach zero, okay, to that the market to reach the final or like the long run equilibrium. All right, I think that will be the content for this chapter. Thank you.